figure of Abel is absolutely charming. Is for me the transitional chain ring between Baroque world and modern world. Is in bones and flesh, Ancien Régime, playing the most typical and symbolical instrument of Ancien Régime, of the old noble and aristocratic world of Baroque era. But he's projecting his huge culture and skill as composer and as a gamba player to the future of modernity. And this task he accomplishes with the most incredible competence in both his compositions and of course in his way of playing the viol, of which we have some witnesses. Abel was known as an incredible improviser. First of all, he was an incredible composer. We don't know much about his compositions, but his musical skills were extremely high. He had learned, as Charles Burney tells us many times in his chronicles, he had learned all the musical science by Johann Sebastian Bach, being Johann Sebastian Bach his teacher for years between 1737 and 1743 in Leipzig. And such a musical skill would imply, in any case, a very good improvisatory skill as well, as we know from all the other big musicians. Mozart, just to say one pretty well-known name, and Charles Burney writes how he himself and Johann Christian Bach were astonished about the way he would improvise surprising modulations on the viol. In such way, he said that we both, him and Johann Christian Bach, were absolutely astonished by his skill. So to approach, for me, that kind of greatness is very difficult. I doubt that we in the 21st century we can have that kind of skill. We have lost many of those capacities. But in my little personal research, I do that research about improvisation, and it came by itself that during the recording of this music, I could feel that there were places where it was necessary to add some personal touch, and that the personal interaction between myself as an interpreter and the music, the manuscript which was there, would accomplish and fulfill actually what was meant in the manuscript itself. Of course, with all the doubts which regard any kind of improvisation, which is part of the culture of the one who is doing. But I do think that it's more trustful to the music itself to add this kind of personal touch, rather than stay apart, a step behind, and just reproduce exactly the notes which are written, which, by the way, have loads and loads of mistakes in that manuscript. So one has to do something anyhow. What I would say, there is this people who know about this period's music, this Abel's music, they have probably also heard about the fact that he was meant to be one of those first artists, romantic artists, which would produce music and work of art under the effect of a kind of drugs. And this thing brings Abel, immediately projects him to a very modern way of looking at the artist, very romantic. But as a matter of fact, we have many records of Abel playing completely drunk. And many of those records speak about an Abel which was in such a condition that he could not walk or talk, but he could heavenly play. And they could so heavenly play that sometimes the noise given by the weeping of the auditors was louder than the sweet notes he was producing. So this melancholy and this sadness of the old Abel, who had lost all of his family and he was in London alone, and the only thing he could rely on was his viola da gamba. This is something very touching, and it's difficult not to get moved by his adagios, which, by the way, were absolutely world famous, as Charles Burney says.